Okay, I meant to try the 15. I'll try 15 again. Okay, 0 for 15 on my keys. While we're waiting, hopefully it's going to be a high rated opponent. Let's watch Play Like Stevie in the meantime. D6. Oh, C5 is no, you can take on B7. Aha, okay. Someone at least above 2000 from Cyprus. So my parents are from Cyprus, by the way. So 4 pawns attack. You usually have a good game from this. Play Bishop G4 here. Okay, so one of the ideas of Bishop G4 is to voluntarily give up the light square bishop, which is usually a crazy idea, but if I can weaken the dark squares, there's compensation, there's frontal pressure, but I usually want to wait for H3. So if he plays H3, then I'll take, and then try and emphasize dark squares, and put maybe Queen A5 is often the move here. That's the most aggressive. It's Queen A5. I've seen some games of John Nunn in King's Indian playing like this, who's like the King's Indian, was one of the King's Indian major exponents, King's Indian defence. So Queen A5 looks a bit strange, but it's kind of annoying potentially for white. Now, does he actually want to prevent B5? He probably doesn't, because this bishop, you know, with E5 is on that diagonal. If he plays E5 knight D7, I'll let him take a pawn there just to get the piece pressure. You know, maybe C4 knight C5 knight D3. Okay, and that's going to happen now. But maybe he's got E6. I'm hoping he doesn't play E6. Knowing my luck, he'll play E6. So am I going to get dynamic pieces or not? Well, E6, I can still play something like possibly knight F6. Allow him to take. It isn't immediate disaster. King takes F7. The bishop's still blocked behind its own pawn. Okay. Right. I'll play knight A6 here, connect the rooks. Or C4. Is there any problem with not playing C4 immediately? I'm not sure there is, so I'm going to do this. C4 actually could try and get back the pawn with the check at minimum, but also the knight C5 to D3 idea. Okay. Is he going to try and target the F pawn? So I'm threatening maybe Queen C5, Queen D6. And this knight E4 is the idea to get into F6. But knight C5 to D3, even knight C5 to B3 is a pin now on there. He's going to move this bishop, surely, so Knight c5, there's also maybe okay, he's protecting that, so I think I'll go for the knight d3. Knight d3 introduces whole loads of stuff like knight b2, queen c5 for knight f2. When I first saw this pawn sack, it was in the game of Michael Hennigan and King's Engine, another good King's Engine player, and he managed to become British champion one year, quite sort of unexpectedly, I suppose. Not many IMs have become British champions, so he was an IM that did that. What about f5 here? Is that too weakening? Then he moves the bishop, then knight d3. Well, if I don't, he might even have d7, so I'm going to weaken my king side and hope for the best. With knight d3. Knight d3 is a very attractive looking knight. Will he accept that position? Is he going to sacrifice? Okay. I'm threatening like knight b2 immediately, winning a piece. Actually, the f5 is controlling the e4 square. Knight b2 could be interesting. Or the check. Knight b2 is an immediate problem. Take on c3 or play bishop c3, weakening my king too much. If I just go for the queen's coming off. Turn to the no. So might have queen b7 even as queen d4 picking up the bishop. Queen takes queen b7, queen d4. He's on the knight though. Okay. Can't use the rooks on the e file. So b5. What about b5 just for b4? Knight goes back somewhere, then queen c5. I think b5 is interesting. Bishop h6, b4 takes on g7. Is that a big deal? I think this is interesting. Just keep the knight. Forget about taking on b2 for a moment. Let's put the pressure up. Keep the knight. Let him exchange off dark square bishops. I just want to push this knight back. Then play queen c5, I think, and try and maybe get a passed pawn here. If his knight stumbles, he'll have a rook disconnection. Okay, he can go to f2 later. But I think b4 is an attractive position, surely, after bishop h6. b4 takes, knight moves back, check. I can get the d6 pawn if nothing else. And then get the e5 square for this knight. Or just put the other knight on c5. Right, so he's attacking my queen with that move, offering b2 on a plate. I can play queen. If I just I take rook b1. Is that possible? Take. There's also bishop d4 and queen b6 to factor in. Interesting. Okay, so queen takes d2, bishop takes, knight takes b2. Then if knight takes, bishop takes, rook b1, there's c3. And if rook b1, then that knight's in trouble. So I think I want to again keep the knight. So I'm going to play b4 for a moment. That shields my queen. And okay, is he going to go for this dark square bishop exchange? With bishop h6, or if he plays knight f2? Okay, he's playing that. Right. I can play a check here, and if bishop e3, rook e3, knight e3, bishop d4, I'll play a check. Alternatively, there's this bishop d4. Okay. So I'm playing b3. It's kind of squeezing move. Always getting dangerous past pawn. If I take on a3, he takes with the rook. I think b3 is a nice kind of squeezing move for endings. Keeps his rook shut down. If he plays the knight, maybe knight b2. So he's bypassed the rook, bishop e3, rook e3, knight e3. Because I could build up on e3 and play f4 there. So maybe that was why king h1 was preferred. So this knight on d3 is still pretty good. Let's see. Right, bishop g1 is introduced, but there's queen d6. And king h7 for bishop, otherwise he's got queen g5. Play for bishop h6 here. That might be a good waiting move. Bishop h6 looks kind of juicy in its own right. I'll play it here. Queen's kind of restricted. In fact, queen d1, there's knight b2. I'll take this diagonal. If I get knight b2 in, well, it's getting my pawn back finally. Knight can return back. This pawn's 2 squares away from queening. It's not an endgame, but it's a dangerous pawn. Factoring in forcing moves, knight a4. Okay. Knight b2 gains tempo anyway, so it looks safe enough. Queen b1, knight d3, knight a4, don't think that's a big deal. Knight f2 wins the exchange actually. Is it worth doing that? Because then I'll be on b2 after anyway. If I win b2, that would be a disaster with my queen. So I think knight f2 winning the exchange. So I'm on b2 now. If he plays rook b1, what about queen c2? Queen c2 looks like a juicy move. Queen moves, this is very passive, he's not even got bishop c1. This bishop's actually nice, and it's nice his bishop's locked in by his own pawn, quite distant, but this bishop's actually kind of gorgeous. So queen c2 is actually possible here. Where would his queen go? Where would I build up the pressure? Is it worth just playing queen c2 and see where his queen goes? It goes to f1, say. Say his queen goes to f1. Then how does he evict my queen? I guess he can play bishop d1 after. Is the queen doing anything good on f2? Oh, he's got, hang on, he's got queen d4. Okay. Actually, bishop d2 is a tactical move for rook e1. Bishop g1, rook e1 pins the bishop and simplifies kind of dangerously. I think bishop d2 is a dangerous forcing move, threatening rook e1. It stops queen d4. Queen c2, queen d4, bishop d2, bishop g1, rook e1. I get to play bishop c3, that would be that pass pawn time. I think bishop d2, yes. 3 things on e1. You can't defend that easily. There's knight e2, hang on, knight e2. It's got knight e2, unfortunately. I've played that. Actually, rook e1 doesn't. No, rook e1 does work. It does pin the bishop. It gets a simplification because the bishop's pinned, so that might be good. If I get that simplification, I'm threatening bishop c3 and b2. So bishop c3, b2, big threat. Okay, or c3 here, just for c2, or cb. Then b2, how would he defend against b1 playing c3 here? Looks like crushing past pawn that. I think there's no defence after c3. If I don't play c3 now, there's bishop d4. I think c3 right now. Oh, he's resigned here. Okay. Okay, so what happened? I enjoy this position because I've seen this before, this pattern of the pawn sack in a game with Michael Hennigan. Really impressed me at the time, dynamic use of the king's engine against the 4 pawns attack. Just if you get a knight to d3, it's just juicy, it's just dislocating, like a Kasparov knight on d3 against Karpov, that classic World Championship game. Bishop d2 I think might have been actually a good move, better than queen c2. Okay, comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.